Welcome, everyone. I'm Kaashifah Beukes. I will be your host and moderator for today. I think we're sitting at just under 40 attendees, and the number is climbing, so I think we can begin. So good afternoon and welcome to our first webinar in our energy transition webinar series. In the past few years, the just energy transition has gained significant momentum. Countries and companies alike have set ambitious targets to decarbonize. It is within this context that we, as the Saldanha Bay Industrial Development Zone and Innovation Campus, felt it pertinent to engage with our stakeholders on this topic, but in a direction important for a special economic zone. And for that reason, our webinar today is broadly focused on smart manufacturing through the lens of a special economic zone. Our aim with this webinar series is to create awareness on these concepts and build partnerships with others in this space that have similar interests so that we can leverage synergies to ensure that this green transition is indeed just and effective. And the IDZs, SEZs play their due role as well, if I may add. So just some webinar etiquette that was flighted through in the holding slides. A few housekeeping rules before we begin. So your mics have been muted for the duration of the session. We encourage you to comment and interact in the chat box throughout the session, but request that you only send questions in via the Q&A box. During the Q&A session, your questions will be directed to the appropriate panelists. Should you want to ask your question directly to the panelist, please raise your hand and the team behind the scenes will unmute you. So we have a first poll for today's session that we would like to launch up on the screen. So why did you register for this webinar? It's a single choice. You have three options. Please vote and let us know what appeals to you in this webinar series. So that's getting the engagement going. And about finding out more about why you've chosen to spend the next 90 minutes or so with us. Okay, I see the poll's been taken down, and there are the poll results. 32% I want to learn more about the topic since it's new. 50% say I want to deepen my knowledge of smart manufacturing. 18% says the speaker lineup is interesting for me. Okay, so we got the right speakers in the room to inspire and motivate you. But moving swiftly along to our keynote address, I wish to welcome and say a deep sense of gratitude to the Deputy Minister from the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, Mr. Fikile Majola, for joining us today in his busy schedule. Mr. Majola has served as Deputy Minister of the DTIC since his appointment in 2019. Prior to his appointment, Mr. Majola served as the Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Energy. Deputy Minister Majola, we thank you for taking time to be part of our first webinar for the year and look forward to hearing more from you. The floor is yours, sir. Thank you.
Good morning. Good afternoon, Dada. Moderator, I prefer to call you CEO. So I'm made to understand that I can't use the video. If that is the case, I'm happy to proceed. Is that the case?
Let's just check with the support team, Palisha. Ah, there I see video. Can we spotlight the minister's video? Okay, good. Thank you. The floor is yours, sir.
Okay, let me start. I'm sorry about the lighting in this room here in Cape Town. Moderator, I understand that we have been told that I would have loved to be with you throughout the webinar, but I would have to leave soon after the presentation so that I can prepare for the sitting of the joint sitting this afternoon. Moderator, Ms. Kaashifah Beukes, board members of Saldanha Bay Industrial Development Zone, panel members, Dr. Ajith Gopal, Ms. Philippa, Rodseth, Mr. Lindokuhke, Ntanti, and Ms. Karg, ladies and gentlemen. A very good afternoon to all of you. It's a great honor and a pleasure for me to address this great initiative organized by the Saldanha Bay Industrial Development Zone and Saldanha Bay Innovation Campus under the theme Smart Manufacturing in the energy and maritime sector through the lens of a special economic zone. Moderator, this webinar takes place at the time the country, like the rest of the world, is hard at work to reconstruct, reposition, and repurpose our economies to attain inclusive economic growth. In the words of President Cyril Ramaphosa on the occasion of the recent SONA, and I quote, "The present situation of deep poverty, unemployment, and inequality is unacceptable and unsustainable. Working with all social partners, the economic reconstruction and recovery plan remains a significant common program to help rebuild our economy. The Special Economic Zone program has a crucial role to play in supporting the implementation of this country's economic reconstruction and recovery plan. This program continues to be an integral part of government's effort to reignite economic growth by attracting strategic direct investments, both local and foreign. This presents potential for sustainable growth and development with exponential export opportunities. The designated SEZs have been showing a positive progress in contributing to the economy of our country. Since the introduction of the SEZ program, there has been an increase in the number of operational investors in the SEZs. In addition, there's a growing investment pipeline. The rapid growth of the SEZs such as Coega, East London, Dubai Trayport, Tshwane Automotive SEZ, and the Saldanha Bay IDZ continue to demonstrate the significant role played by the SEZ program in our country. The rand value of operational investments is expected to increase by an estimated 7.5 billion by the end of 2021-2022 financial year. that is in the coming months, subject to the completion of investment projects that are currently under construction. Ladies and gentlemen, manufacturing-driven industrialization continues to be a critical area of focus in the context of fighting the scourge of the country's triple challenges of poverty, unemployment, and inequality. However, parallel to the challenging global trading environment, which is mainly attributable to the COVID-19 pandemic, and more recently to the undesirable unrest in the country, the growth of the South African manufacturing sector has been severely affected. In line with one of the key priorities of government for the current term, which is to put together a bold action plan to attain a greater industrialization output and economic inclusion, we are attending to the revival of the sector and other priority sectors. The State of the Nation address detailed how government is taking extraordinary measures to deal with the disruptions to businesses caused by, among other things, the energy supply shortfall. We need to continue to seek innovative ways to lead the economy out of the current challenges. And having said this, government has identified the maritime and energy sectors as some of its primary focus areas, underpinned by various policies and initiatives, many of which are spearheaded by the DTIC. The ocean economy makes an enormous contribution to the country's GDP by playing a significant role in generating much needed jobs. This sector has an opportunity to ramp up its contribution to economic growth by leveraging its rich marine resources in a sustainable manner to boost both economic and social development. There are several other opportunities that can stimulate growth within the sector, and among others, these are the management of shipyards, dry docks, marine repair shops, and similar enterprises. These are the competency gaps that the government seeks to plug, as South Africa cannot afford the luxury of neglecting an industry that has enormous potential to put the economy on a new growth trajectory. The maritime economy holds immense potential to create a thriving ecosystem where entrepreneurs can be incubated and grow. This therefore presents all the SEZs, including the Saldanha Bay IDZ, with an opportunity to create a platform for businesses in the maritime and energy sectors to adopt smart manufacturing technologies. This is possible because over the years, the SEZ program has successfully served as a tool to create new industrial hubs program director, I think we're having a little a disruption here. So let me repeat. This presents all the SEZs, including the Saldanha Bay Industrial Development Zone, with an opportunity to create a platform for businesses in the maritime and energy sectors to adopt smart manufacturing technologies. This is possible because over the years, the SEZ program has successfully served as a tool to create new industrial hubs in the country, focusing strongly on sectors that are capable of accelerating economic growth and development with the maritime and energy sectors included. Ladies and gentlemen, smart manufacturing will create a competitive advantage in the space of maritime and energy as manufacturers are competing in innovativeness, short response time to change in markets, low cost and reliable products to meet the end consumer demands. In this respect, the fourth industrial revolution must be viewed as providing impetus to the objectives of our national development plan. Through the SEZ program and the provision of excellent infrastructure and well-incentivized packages, smart manufacturing in the sectors of clean energy and maritime can yield positive results in promoting the country's industrialization agenda and economic growth. All of us are responsible for guiding the evolution of 4IR or smart manufacturing in the decisions we make on a daily basis as government, as citizens, as consumers, and as investors. The fourth industrial revolution is an unprecedented opportunity for Africa to embrace and fully participate in the technology metamorphosis to create the continent's own digital future. This will assist the continent and her people move from low to moderate prosperity to better living standards. We need to grasp the opportunity and power we have to shape smart manufacturing and direct it towards a future that reflects our common objectives and goals. The idea of smart factories, smart cities, smart ports, etc., in which machines are augmented with web connectivity and connected to a system that can visualize the entire production chain and make decisions on its own, is now becoming our daily reality. Moderator, there are many opportunities to take advantage of in this smart manufacturing ecosystem. Thus, government and industry need to work together in developing a robust digital economy in the country and the continent. We need to strengthen economic partnerships with other African countries through the Special Economic Zone program. This will help us with unlocking the untapped expansion opportunities for the South African companies and strengthen the integration of industrial value chains between our different countries. We must work together to pool our shared skills and resources and use the special economic zones to catalyze the types of industrial activity that will underpin a transformed African economy. The outcomes of this webinar will help inform government of the necessary actions that should be considered to support smart manufacturing in the energy and maritime sectors in the country. Mrs. Beukes, you would remember that we were here a couple of months ago and we noted the challenges faced by the companies located in the zone. I wish to say that we will return soon to understand the progress made in dealing with these challenges, and where problems persist, we will work together to find lasting solutions. We must also have a conversation about how to unlock and facilitate the development of appropriate infrastructure required to enhance the maritime and smart manufacturing sectors within the zone. Ladies and gentlemen, I look forward to your participation in this event and sharing of ideas from great minds that we have around the table on how we can strengthen our smart manufacturing in the two priority sectors and take the country and the district forward. I'm also looking forward to future webinars on the green hydrogen economy that will discuss the global trends of decarbonization and some of the means of achieving this. We need to have conversations on themes relevant to industrial and special economic zones within the context of energy transition to create awareness on the hydrogen economy value chain. Moderator, with that, I would like to thank you very much for the opportunity and would like to also add my weight in welcoming all the participants and the panelists. I look forward to a productive discussion this afternoon, and I'll be coming back soon to visit you in the Saldanha Bay Industrial Development Zone. I thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Deputy Minister. Thank you so much for that address and setting the scene quite nicely for our panel discussion. I think, I'm seeing in the chat from some of our investors in the room that your commitment to unblock bottlenecks are much welcomed, because at the end of the day, it's the investment that we need that would bring the jobs and the growth and the transformation that this country needs and can hold on to through the SEZ program. So thank you so much. I know that your time was short, and apologies for not stating that up earlier. You do have to go to a joint committee meeting, but we thank you so much for setting that scene. Okay, then moving on to our panel. So our panel today consists of industry and government experts. So we encourage you to engage and send through your questions in the Q&A box, as I've said before. If I can just ask the panelists now to switch on their videos so we can see, and I will be doing a quick round of introductions for each panelist. Okay, so welcome. So on the panel today, Dr. Ajith Gopal from the CSIR. In his current role, Ajith is responsible for implementing strategic objectives that enable the CSIR manufacturing cluster to contribute towards South Africa's reindustrialization, developing improved manufacturing processes, as well as industry support that boosts South Africa's manufacturing competitiveness in the global economy. Welcome, Ajith, and thanks for joining us. Next panelist would be Ms. Philippa Rajdev from the Manufacturing Circle. Currently the Executive Director, Philippa joined the Manufacturing Circle in 2015 to elevate the voice of manufacturing in South Africa and promote the sector's development as South Africa's greatest opportunity for job-rich growth, the manufacturing being an industry-led body in that regard. Next, we have Mr. Lindokuhke Ntanti from Coega Development Corporation. In his current role, he focuses on enabling economic development through greenfield and brownfield investment projects with a focus on maritime and manufacturing investment projects within the Coega SEZ for the benefit of the Eastern Cape at large, in Coega, my hometown. Then lastly, Ms. Ilse Karg from DTIC. So she's currently responsible for formulating an industrial policy and strategy to support future production processes and technologies in the context of the fourth industrial revolution, as well as build the necessary resource and human capacity in the National Department of Trade and Industry in South Africa. So we welcome all of you today, and we can get started with the questions. So we have some questions for the panelists to start off with. First question is to Ajith. So what are some of the advanced technologies that can be used in smart manufacturing, and are there marine applications?
Thank you very much, Kaashifah, and good afternoon to everybody. I think maybe to start with, I just want to make a slight distinction, if you'll allow, advanced manufacturing and smart manufacturing. And I don't want to necessarily follow some strict formal textbook definition or anything of that sort, but rather more on a conceptual, colloquial level, just make a differentiation. And the main reason for that is smart. The concept of smart doesn't have to be applied only to the advanced manufacturing technologies. The concept of smart can be applied to traditional manufacturing businesses and technologies as well, and you can get a lot of benefit from that. So advanced manufacturing has been with us for a long time, and it's generally referred to any technologically superior product or process or service offering that results in some kind of improved efficiencies, aspects of resource management, etc. It's normally, and I use the word normally in inverted commas, associated with some formal accredited quality assurance process as well. And some examples of advanced manufacturing would be, for example, laser-enabled manufacturing, such as laser welding, laser cladding, that helps reduce cost and improve energy utilization. Additive manufacturing is another example of an advanced manufacturing technology for both the product development as well as for tooling. I think we underestimate the application of the additive manufacturing for tooling in the traditional manufacturing sense. Metal injection molding, advanced casting, robotics, and automation. These are all advanced technologies that can be used by themselves and already being applied in the marine environment. Robotic welding systems globally is used in the shipbuilding industry, as well as 3D printing. I mean, 3D printing or additive manufacturing, the polymer type of additive manufacturing has been with us for a fair number of years now, and metal additive manufacturing is with us at the moment. So advanced manufacturing and innovations in advanced manufacturing technologies has been there and will continually evolve. We see a very recent development in the automotive sector on the GigaPress, which is an advanced manufacturing technology that Elon Musk and Tesla are promoting to reduce complexity of manufacturing in the automotive space. And I don't see it taking long before that concept is applied to the marine sector as well. In terms of smart manufacturing, I think smart manufacturing takes advantage of 4IR related technologies to optimize resource utilization, sort of inward digital transformation, integrating supply chains and value chains, what we sometimes refer to as outward digital transformation, waste management across an integrated value chain, and which is, I think, something that the IDZs and are very suited towards. So it's as the minister alluded to, it's taking advantage of the digital technologies and digital transformations to enable more effective manufacturing processes, but also more effective business processes. And I think smart manufacturing in the context of more efficient business processes is also a big advantage, or it can be a big enabler for local industry. So some examples of smart manufacturing technologies would include digitalization or digital twins. And digital twins is essentially a virtual simulation using multi-physics and multi-scale models, but linked to the physical environment in some way. So either through sensor data that's getting fed to it, but there needs to be a linkage to a physical system. The concept of industrial Internet of Things and data analytics and big data analytics, I think, is familiar to many people. It's applicable to the machine side to enable preventative maintenance and improve uptime, health monitoring of equipment, etc. It's also relevant to the product side. So a lot of products nowadays are 4IR enabled or offer value-adding services that take advantage of 4IR and digital technology, such as self-health monitoring and communication back to the OEMs, etc. But IO, Industrial Internet of Things and data analytics, are also applied to processes, where you can optimize production processes, but also look at efficiencies or suboptimal processes within the business environment. So the full supply chain environment upstream, as well as the value chain environment downstream. Then there's augmented and virtual reality, which is growing in popularity as well as in adoption, especially overseas. And it's used a lot for training purposes, but also to assist the operator with diagnostics and of machines, maintenance of machines and equipment, operator training, etc. And then I mentioned the value chain integration and the strong positioning of the IDZs to enable this whole concept of the circular manufacturing. So those are some examples, and these technologies are already being adopted globally. I mean, Australia are busy with digital twins in the ship design area. There's Japan is busy with virtual reality simulations for training in ship design. There's IoT, sensor data, and big data analytics that's being adopted in Germany. In Australia, BAE are actually digitizing an entire shipyard to optimize processes at that level. So I think maybe in summary on that, and I know we spoke a little bit or a lot on the global environment, and I think a little bit later on we'll start getting into some of the accessibility of the technologies locally. But I think maybe in summary, at both advanced and smart manufacturing technologies is definitely applicable to the marine industry. And we need to do more to create awareness around these technologies, the potential impact to business, as well as provide implementation support for improved adoption of these technologies. Let me stop there. Thank you, moderator.
Thanks, Ajith. I think you've given us so much of an idea of firstly making the nuances between advanced versus smart, because I think everybody would think that smart means advanced, and there's differences. And then and what's also interesting is the evolution of the application of and the ideation, like thinking of and the ideas of those technologies being taken from one sector and possibly having an application, and a value in another sector. I think that's. But you also then raise what you bring into light is the awareness that's needed, and then so that sort of goes nicely into my next question, which to Ilse. Looking at South Africa, then, in your view, how fast is our adoption of smart technologies, specifically in manufacturing? And not to preempt you, but I'm kind of thinking that it would be in some of the more established industries, they're probably leap years ahead versus some of the others.
Yes, thank you very much, and good afternoon to everybody. I think my short answer would be the adoption is too slow in South Africa, and there are many reasons for that. Just a few indicators that we are looking at is we see a decline in investments by the business sector, specifically in R&D spending or R&D investment. We see a decline in manufacturing as a percentage of GDP. And I think we need to reconsider how we calculate value add in manufacturing. We see that there's a sharp increase in the assembly of imported parts or imported products instead of local manufacturing. This is not only negative for our balance of payment, but it's also a loss in opportunities to create smart manufacturing jobs. And we have in the ICT and Digital Economy Master Plan, we have set out big bets around new technologies, and it also applies to manufacturing. And it's listed there, and four of the big bets of smart technologies are physical technologies, tech applications, digital platforms, and digitally traded services. But these technologies also comes with risks. And in our formulation of a digital manufacturing policy, we are looking at technological capabilities and the risks around building technological capability. It is a risk to assume that large companies would adapt fast to have smart technologies, because these large firms have production lines and systems for mass production and very little flexibility in their production systems. Therefore, to adopt smart technologies would require large capital investments to change production systems. And at the same time, it's also a risk to assume that smaller companies would adopt smart technologies fast, because on the one hand, they cannot afford to employ either an IT manager or industrial designer or technician. On the other hand, small companies do not necessarily have the knowledge and the skills to adopt new technologies that will contribute to the bottom line. So there's also risks around the smart technologies. In conclusion, the department has started with a project to create awareness and build technological capability. We have, in collaboration with TIPS and in consultation with the Department of Science and Innovation, started a project to develop an observatory for new technologies. And in this observatory, we will profile the different smart technologies to share information with industry on the capabilities and how do we build technological capability in order to assist with the adoption of smart technologies. I will put the link for the observatory in the chat. Thank you very much.
No, thanks, Ilse. Yeah, I think what you've said resonates, and I think the way that you put it also, like the 4 big bets, you know, and just thinking on the last 2 years of what the whole world has had to deal with, uncertainty is the new certainty. And what you've described in the differences, and you know, you can't just assume things for a big company or a small company. It speaks to having a very contextual, very local, you need a very in-depth view and understanding and appreciation of that industry, that subsector, you know, and the world that they operate in. My next question is to Philippa, introducing a new angle from what we've asked before. But so what are the trends that you're seeing in manufacturing, advanced manufacturing, smart manufacturing that are being brought on by the shift towards the circular economy? Because I think that's also been the agitator of smart and advanced, is we want to do, you know, we want to reuse, recycle, and reduce.
Thanks, Kaashifah, and afternoon, colleagues. In answering that question, and you've indicated, you know, the sort of some of the key phrases around a circular economy. So let me perhaps just elaborate on my understanding of that, which will help to answer the question. So as you rightly note, the circular economy is a new way of looking at our, historic production model of take, make, and waste, linear sort of model. So the circular economy, as you say, talks about concepts of sharing, reusing, repairing, remanufacturing, recycling, all with a view towards extending life cycles of products, reducing waste, and increasing sustainability, and those things are all very much necessary in our way of thinking about manufacturing and production, in order to be competitive, to be sustainable. So as far as trends in manufacturing are concerned, and I do note Ms. Karg's comments on research and development and the reduction in spend, which is kind of in some ways contrary to where we should be, but a function of many things, maybe low profitability of manufacturing companies, the ability to invest and understand your return on investment, but it needs to be in a sort of a longer term play, and sometimes that can be a little bit challenging. However, as the manufacturing circle and representing various companies and industry, we do still see examples that talk to positively addressing the circular economy. So the first one I'd like to talk to is really the concept of industrial symbiosis. So where one company's waste can actually be the inputs for another company. So really looking at what is a certain company's sort of value chain or part of that value chain. What are their waste and outputs, and how could those be used as inputs, for a commercially viable solution, as opposed to just, looking to dispose of that. So there we have an example of school metals in the metals industry, company that's and many in that sort of part of the value chain. Slag, foundry sand, sludge, can those be inputs into another process? Another member company of ours, Gopal, that manufactures construction products, plasterboard, gyprop. What are the inputs of that they could perhaps use as a waste product from elsewhere? So industrial symbiosis, as a concept, makes a huge amount of sense, and we are seeing that being applied in certain examples. And then also, I guess that's a piece of the overall life cycle analysis of sort of a product from, if you want to call it, cradle to grave. I'm using lots of sort of colloquialisms, but I really do like those concepts. So that even if, a product, there's a part of a value chain, maybe paper, for example, being manufactured, but where is the source of that paper? From all the way, from the cradle being forestry, and all the way to, the manufacture of the paper, the recycling of it. How many times can it flow through a process? So if one understands, and that applying that kind of conceptual thinking, from looking at value chains from cradle to grave, how does everything connect together? We do see some quite innovative work and activity in industry and the manufacturing sector, and absolutely something that we need to pursue in order to make the most of that. Thanks.
Thanks, Philippa. I think the one of the things that you said in the beginning when you were explaining the circular economy is actually sharing. And I've never actually thought of it that way, like as a potential element in the circular, because I had said reuse, reduce, recycle. But if I can think on the Saldanha experience, we meet with many small businesses, medium-sized businesses there, And one of the things that have come out is that there's a need to share resources, if it's possible, and it's not something that South Africans are, especially I think in the traditional business senses, are used to, and I think it's something that we have to explore, because we need better access to resources, the factors of production, and I think that whole concept of actually sharing between two, neighbors to actually make both more competitive and efficient is a novel idea in a resource and capacity constrained environment that we find ourselves in. But also the industrial symbiosis and the cradle to grave. So one of the investment projects in the IDZ is actually a green ship recycling project. And they've been investing and undertaking their bankable feasibility study. But it's exactly that. It's about, a vessel, a boat coming in to be broken down into constituent parts that then actually energizes a next value chain, like the next stage of its life. Yeah. Thank you. To Lindu. As a fellow SEZ operator, what do you see are the opportunities that lie in an SEZ for smart manufacturing?
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you again for the opportunity to take part in this discussion. And I think much of the opportunities that are obvious to the eye or to the untrained individual have been mentioned by the other panelists, whether it's kind of a symbiotic system within an SEZ or looking at value chain integration and the likes. But I just want to maybe take it a step back to kind of say there's maybe differing views in South Africa specifically on the role that an SEZ, plays, and maybe there's a conversation that's needed amongst the SEZ themselves to come to a unified view of what that the role could be. So maybe to simplify it, one SEZ could see themselves as simply as a land developer, in which case you have a piece of land that your mandate is to locate businesses. One way or another, and that could be successful in one way. That could be successful in industrializing an area, or creating jobs, or creating opportunities and the likes. The other way would be maybe to take that a step further, when SEZ sees itself as a platform, and I think I'm borrowing this from the Deputy Minister's address, as a platform for all manner of future development, whether it's in smart manufacturing, logistical efficiencies, energy transition as an entire concept. Then in that case, you take it a step further. You say, look, in terms of my planning, I need to have 50, 80, 100-year view on this particular piece of land. I need to take an integrative approach in terms of the surrounding area, whether it's a municipality, metro, the province, going onwards, nationally and globally. And therein maybe lies the opportunity that we're talking about here today, where now you're opening yourself up to ideas and innovations in other areas of the world that then sit as a platform for the sort of technology that Ajith alluded to earlier, as well as advancements that Ilse and Philippa as well have mentioned in trends. Then you are no longer just offering a land solution or a building for someone to just occupy. You're actually thinking a step further. So I'm proud to say that Coega has taken that initiative very early stages. I think before smart manufacturing may have been a term we were aware of. We were aware of logistical synergies that could be of value to the zone, as well as sector synergies that may be. So what we have done is, as I mentioned earlier, we are dealing with a 9,000 hectare piece of land. And one might develop it in phases where you kind of focus on a small piece of land, you throw everything in there, and then you move on to the next sector. But what we've decided to do is that we split the 9,000 hectares into 14 sectors, 14 zones. Within each zone, we did an early study on synergies that could be created amongst the different kinds of businesses that we would potentially locate. So we moved from a logistics zone, which is the most closest to the port, to an automotive zone that has direct access to the logistics zone, because the two tend to be in tandem. Because as the attendees may understand, all of our OEMs do depend on a solid logistical base for their just-in-time logistic solutions. And then we move to a light manufacturing zone, which houses our agro-processing, our light manufacturing, in terms of renewable energy components, as well as cardboard, or rather packaging materials. And that's where we think we've seen most bang for our buck in terms of this, or what we mean. To share an actual live story of this kind of situation is, for years we had two clients that were neighbors, literally across the road from each other. One is a dairy processing facility, and the other is a tomato paste factory. And for the longest time, we were setting up kind of cross pollination sessions, where we would let or allow our investors to kind of talk over coffee, over drinks in the afternoon. But for some reason, this never crossed anyone's mind that, okay, this one investor's kind of wastage, which in terms of steam, could be used in a process at some future date for this dairy client. And lo and behold, one day we have Famous Brands just taking a tour of our zone. They found out there's a cheese factory here, or rather potential for a cheese factory here, and a company that's struggling that does tomato paste. And those are two of their main ingredients for the pizza chain, which is Debonairs. And that, for us, as much as we pride ourselves in kind of creating these symbiotic relationships, did not cross anyone's mind. So after a few meetings, Famous Brands bought over stake in both entities and created those new production streams using the two facilities. And that's just one example of what is possible in an IDZ, or in an SEZ as we call them today. So yes, that's the one opportunity that exists, which has been mentioned. But also, I think from a South African perspective, there's a lot the country has done in terms of positioning ourselves as a open for business country, in the form of the incentives we provide that support innovation, that support technology importing and the likes. And although it might be, as Ilse mentioned, difficult to convert an existing and an already large kind of entity into smart technologies, those support, financial support by the DTI, then do support, or rather create an opportunity for newer facilities to then adopt a longer-term view on the technologies that they've found in the market. Because again, you're dealing with a situation where someone just says, I'm going to go for the tried and tested, implement it, but then we have the conversation with them. It's like, you have this potential support that you can get from the DTI or the likes, other DFIs. How about you actually have a longer term view on your facility? How long will it remain competitive in kind of creating those efficiencies? How about we organize or facilitate those meetings with yourselves, the DTI and the likes of the IDC, on potentially funding the technologies that will enable you to be competitive in the global market space into the next 10 years, for instance. So that's one other opportunity that's available for companies in an SEZ. Another one I would like to mention from a development or infrastructure support point of view, I think we quickly learned as the SEZ that if your mandate is to kind of go after the whales, if I can put it in kind of casino terms, where you're looking for the Mercedes-Benz of the world, or the GEs of the world, or the Samsungs of the world, you tend to alienate locally grown entities or locally grown businesses who then kind of think, okay, the local industrial area that's been around since I was born is probably where I'm meant to go, and not maybe realize that actually the SEZs are meant for them too. That internationally or globally contextualized value chain is an actual perfect space for them to locate themselves physically. So I think we did quite a lot to convince the local business market that the SEZs are for them as well. And in that sense, out of the 55 live investors we have, I would say about 40% are South African businesses and South African JVs with international companies, where we have a large steel recycling plant in the form of Agni Steels, which is literally a co-venture between a scrap steel company, South African company, and the company that they used to export the scrap steel to in India, where they said, okay, rather than exporting raw scrap steel, how about we gonna add a layer of beneficiation here? And that company's been growing every 4 years with a new expansion on adding more value on that product before it leaves the country or the borders of South Africa. So that's another way that the SEZs can then create that platform for local and international companies. Yeah, so I think there's a number of opportunities that I'll get a chance later.
No, thanks, Lindo. I hear you, and I think thank you for rephrasing that as well, the question. And I think for me, the role that the role that SEZs play is so catalytic, because we can take a long-term view, a long-term play, and it's not only, as you said, to use your words, a land and a building solution. Then we can play in the spaces in between to understand then what are the opportunities or what are the needs for industrialization to an investment to occur. I'm going to ask Ajith a second question, and just aware of time, but also that there is some there's Q&A questions also being posed. So, in your view, how accessible are smart manufacturing technologies then in South Africa?
So definitely it's not accessible enough. And I think Ilse mentioned some of the challenges to adoption of smart manufacturing technologies and advanced manufacturing for that matter as well. And sometimes it's related to the affordability of the infrastructure. I think a common challenge is the lack of skills, both in implementing the advanced manufacturing technologies such as 3D printing, because you have to have technical skills to re-engineer that component so it can be 3D printed or additive manufactured. So that's a common element. I think specifically with smart manufacturing as well, there's limited awareness of what is 4IR and digitalization and how it can be applied to a business. I think, like I mentioned earlier on, and the reason I made that slight nuance differentiation between advanced and smart manufacturing is that the smart manufacturing technologies can be applied to business processes, it can be applied to conventional manufacturing, and you can get a lot of benefit from application of the 4IR and digital technologies. And industry is not as aware of this as what they should be. So I think also specifically on the smart manufacturing, a big contributor is actually the lack of standards and guidelines applicable for the South African context. And again, government is doing a lot of work on sort of policy enablement in the 4IR space, but we need to translate those policies into implementation standards and guidelines so that it can be more accessible to industry. So some of these challenges, I want to mention a few aspects that I'm aware of that at least we are busy doing or involved in. to address some of these challenges. And the one is we've launched, the CSIR has launched a learning factory platform that went live earlier this year and offers training in 4IR at various levels. Now, there are numerous, why I'm mentioning this one specifically is there are numerous online training material available. And I think with the digital connectivity nowadays, anybody almost anywhere can access this training material. And part of the challenge in accessibility is the training material is normally geared towards an external foreign type environment. So what we're trying to do with the Learning Factory, and I'll post a link to that site, the training site in the chat box just now, is to contextualize the learning to South African industry specific contexts and requirement. So the scenarios in the training is South African based. The challenges and the problems that we apply the technology to as part of the training is local industry. So I think it creates more familiarity by doing it that way on the technology and how it can be used. We are also partnering with the World Economic Forum. We've got an affiliate center in 4IR that's hosted at the CSIR. And we're working together with MESA, which is an international organization on specialized in standards and guidelines to localize what's available internationally to be specific to a South African context. So these are the things that's in process to try and bridge this gap and make the technology a lot more accessible. Specifically in the marine environment, the Marine Manufacturing, Maintenance and Repair and Associated Services Development Program is actually an initiative driven by the DTIC. It's hosted and implemented by the CSR, but it's aimed at assisting suppliers with support in terms of marine standards and accreditation, support that we provide to manufacturers requiring technology enhancements, as well as enabling new suppliers to enter the supply chain. So thus far, the initiative was started in 2019. It has been affected a little bit by the lockdowns and the pandemics, etc. But for this year, for this financial year, the program has already assisted 11 companies with certificate within the marine environment specifically, with certifications against standards. I mean, 2 technical quality certifications around welding in a for marine applications, which is a very specialized form of welding, as well as 9 product certifications, so enabling localization of products into the country. And then 1 was supported with technology development and enhancement, and specifically around localization of hydrofoil manufacturing capability. So I think there are some initiatives already underway to make the technology accessible, but we are not doing near enough at what's required to enable a much larger scale adoption and uptake for the industry. And more definitely needs to be done in that regard. So I think if I can stop there.
Thanks, Ajith. I'm just looking at the time that we have. We've already run out of time for the set questions, but I know there's a few Q&A questions. So I'm gonna shoot Ilse. There's a question here. Following on, given the risks and assumptions you've mentioned for large and small companies in terms of their ability to adopt technology, does this not present an opportunity for a unique type of partnership? Are there programs to facilitate these discussions? And I think Ajith has mentioned a few, but you can answer. We can also take your answer and put it in a package and communication to all attendees if you'd like more time just to list all of the things that the DTI is stimulating. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Yes, there are many opportunities, I think, to work together. We see quite a lot of new associations like the Drone Council and SAMDRA, which is the Mobile Devices Distributors and Repairs Association. that are busy with professional designations and qualifications they work with higher education on those qualifications and occupations. But some of the other projects that we have, it's focused a lot on skills development, because skills development and abilities and knowledge is strongly linked to innovation and problem solving. And that's in the economic reconstruction and recovery plan, also one of our priorities. So we are involved in what we call the Digital Work Accelerator, which is a public-private partnership that will focus on digital skills, and there are many projects there. I think we have listed more than 30 projects at the moment with the private sector, between different government departments and the private sector. And then we also see a new approach to occupational profiling, where the MICT, SETA and QCTO, in partnership with industry, is developing 14 new critical occupations, which are at the moment outsourced to other countries. And in our department itself, I'm the program manager for the Insimbi Skills Program, which is an artisans skills program. And we have state-of-the-art facilities to train, for example, coded welders that I know are in high demand in the energy and maritime sector. So I think there are many programs that we can go into discussions on. Thank you.
Thanks, Ilse. And I think my last question, I would take it to Philippa, as from the manufacturing circle and from the voice of industry. There's a question here in the chat. What are the it starts off with we are really good at knowing what to do, not so much on the implementation. What are the top 3 critical actions, specifically actions we need to begin with now to move this forward so that we can act? So.
I really like that question. I completely concur. I think, as a country across industry and government, or business and government, we're quite good at making plans, but sometimes, we fall a little short on implementation. So, if we apply basic project management principles, I would say that's our key priority. Identify a project, something tangible. You can scope the project. And identify who are the stakeholders that need to be involved across government, industry, technical experts. What is it that needs to be done, over what timeline, and what is it that we're looking to achieve? So if, for example, we've got this wonderful training option and offering in terms of specialized welding, that's fantastic. So how can we look to use that and implement that in applying it to benefit a specific project, for example? So really, to implement, we need to identify projects that I think from an industry point of view have commercial viability, and from a government point of view sit within certain programs and mandates, and look at what it is that we can do to achieve action and success. It's not rocket science, but it does require an innovative and collaborative approach and an agile approach, and really to work together to solve problems and get things done.
Thanks, Philippa. Okay, I see there are some more questions in the Q&A. Cuthbert, it's a question to the IDZ. What is the expected trajectory on renewables to hydrogen for the IDZ, considering the restrictive marine zone protection laws? Actually, I was participating on a webinar yesterday for the EU Africa Business Forum, and the focus was on hydrogen and greening of the shipping industry, for example. And it was quite interesting to participate on the platform because there were the shipping companies, and what there were two representatives from shipping companies and shipping owners in the webinar, and what they spoke about was global availability of hydrogen in order to convert to that technology, in order to because if you have a vessel that's docking in ports around the world and your vessel is different now because it's taking hydrogen or something else, then it's really going to impact your bottom line if you need to do more trips to get that specific fuel. So global availability for hydrogen. So, and in the sense of, and pricing, obviously, and the safety of hydrogen, and there needs to be standards and codes set to help make people feel comfortable with moving, to example, to hydrogen. But in the context of today's webinar on smart manufacturing, then I think that the opportunity lies in any of the SEZs, all of the SEZs, especially the seaport SEZs, to take hold of and be an agitator or catalyst for making, raising hydrogen technology awareness, its applications in the industrial business, in the manufacturing space, in the fuel, in the bunkering, and all of this. So for the IDZ, certainly, just speaking on behalf of the Saldanha IDZ, this is definitely an area of potential for us, and we're quite keenly interested in advancing this further, as I'm sure Coega is out as well. On the next question is from Antonio on biogas. Would it be included in the mandate of the IDZ? Yeah, I think that, there is an application for it, and if it fits within the value chain and in the market, and if there's a commercial viability to it, then I don't see, because I think with the SEZs, we are an estate manager. That is one of our roles. So in terms of waste management and encouraging a circular economy, a lower carbon footprint, and the consequences of how you operate the SEZ, if biomass is a factor that can help improve that, then I think it will certainly be something that we could look at. So those were two questions actually for me. But I think that brings us to the end in the last few minutes of the webinar. And I think if I can provide some key takeaways from the discussion held, I've been writing up notes furiously from what everyone has said. I think to begin with, from the Deputy Minister, if I may speak on his behalf, what he brought in is that we need to define new ways to growth, which include innovation, which include looking at export opportunities, and growing our competitive advantage on a global scale. Because I think I was also at a incentive session with the National Treasury, and I think it's Russell from Invest KZN said quite emphatically that there is a race to FDI, as well as domestic investment, direct investment, and we should all just try not to rewrite the game, because at the end of the day, there's a global competition for investment, and in our globalizing world and in our reduced, shorter value chains, and also what the consumer and the customer has access to now, just on the on the phone. It's about your time to market, and what I think what has been said here, it's the manufacturing process, but also the business process that can be smarted in that regard. Then I think from Ajith, who described all of the different ways of smart manufacturing and advanced manufacturing and the nuances, I think that really it's what brings to mind there is that there are so many different examples and things underway that we really shouldn't think it's just one thing. And so then our role as a catalyst for industrialization and in the program working with industry, government, and society is about bringing greater awareness then to these technologies and processes that can enhance our competition. Then from Ilse, emphatically that it is too slow, and I think Ajith saying that it's not accessible enough. And the digital manufacturing policy, I think, will set some clarity, go far ways to identify what is the technological capability that could be required, that should be supported in order to take hold of smart manufacturing. And also describing some of the challenges of why possibly it isn't being taken up within our industry. And then from Philippa, introducing the sharing, the reusing, the repairing, the remanufacturing, the reducing elements of that need to be considered. And I think one of the things that you've raised, Philippa, is that understanding your return on your investment from R&D is one way of convincing manufacturers to take up smart manufacturing and advanced manufacturing, as well as looking at industrial symbiosis and cradle-to-grave opportunities. From Lindu, I think what you've brought is that the role of SEZ can be quite unique, and it is unique. We play in the spaces between business and government and society, and we can take a long-term view on the piece of land within our development. And I think I'm being alerted here. There is a hand up from Simon Smith Godfrey. Do you want the last question? Sorry, I missed you earlier.
Find out regarding the hydrogen. The plan from Japan and Germany is to put South Africa as one of the top 4 countries for the exports of hydrogen by 2030. And their plan is to take the derivative of hydrogen, which is ammonia, and then transform it into hydrogen and make hydrogen battery packs. So you were talking about the availability of hydrogen for the ships at the different ports. Isn't that manufacturing of hydrogen battery packs exactly what we should be looking at? That we also look at manufacturing that battery packs along our coastal areas.
Yeah, no, so I think it's in Simo, not Simon, apologies. No, it's a very good question. And I think that it's the whole, from what I understand, it's the whole hydrogen possibilities. So as a fuel that, you know, and then gets converted to ammonia and put in as a fuel for ships. Also in fuel cells, you know, hydrogen powered fuel cells. So certainly, I think that whole possibilities, I think we need to open our minds to looking at, you know, how we use energy in different vessels and vehicles and different processes, and hydrogen can certainly play a role in that. So there's a second poll that they would like to do, which is asking the question of how did you hear about this webinar? Felicia, can you put that up? And while you do that, I want to thank today's speakers for sharing their knowledge with us, as well as the audience for joining in today and actively participating in the Q&A and in the chat. This webinar serves as a launch to our series of webinars that we're planning for the year ahead, focusing on the energy transition. Since the energy transition landscape is quite broad, we'll be looking at specific themes that are relevant to SEZs. And our next webinar will focus on Saldanha as a hydrogen hub potential. And then the last one, the third one in the webinar will be focused on hydrogen-based steel production. This is the poll 1 results of the webinar to the support crew. Okay. Okay, there's no, I think there's some technical difficulty. We're having difficulty putting the next polls up. But yeah, a big thank you to our panelists. So will you be joining our upcoming webinars? Yes, no, we'll make a decision once I know more about the webinar topic. We'll make a decision once I know more about the speakers. This is really just information that's useful for us to make sure that we put together webinars that are informative and that interest you. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So, yep, yes, definitely 72%. And yeah, we need to prepare for that webinar and make sure that we send out the information and make sure that we communicate what the next webinar will be about. So once again, thank you so much. It has been a real pleasure speaking with you all. Thank you for sharing your views and engaging with the audience. And take care, everyone. Have a beautiful week further. Thank you.